Hey there, and welcome to the Hawkeye Hotspot podcast here on hawkfanatic.com. It is Thursday, July the 20th, 2023, 9:15 a.m. Central Time. And I'm getting feedback from the YouTube feed. I need to put that on mute because that'll drive me nuts. That was coming through my ear. I was hearing myself on delay talking to myself. That was bizarre and uncomfortable. Can't believe it's July 20th already, Scott. Summer is moving quickly, and we have I should let people know, programming note up front, we will be in Indianapolis next week for Big Ten football media days. So we will not have a Thursday podcast next week, most likely Friday, but we will keep you updated on that, and I'll let folks know via Twitter what the plan is. Saw your tweet either from last night or this morning, Scott, on the series finale of Mayans. I did not get a chance to watch it last night, so no spoilers. Just your reaction.
They had a great ending. I think it was probably a more satisfactory ending than what we had with Suns. And how many episodes behind are you?
Just the finale.
Just the finale?
I caught up last week on everything else. So yeah, I'm down to the last one.
This was one of the better finales you'll find. Honestly. Good. It's not a disappointing one, and it's this one, and let's see, Succession was pretty good, and The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, it just shows you the wide range of my interests, I suppose. I thought that was fantastic. So lately I've been doing well on the series finales. But yeah, I thought this one was right. Let's just say that. I won't go any farther because I don't want to ruin it for you.
I was going to watch it last night, but I didn't want to watch commercials. I want to be able to get through it, without the commercials. And so I carried on with the final season of Handmaid's Tale, which I'm finally catching up on. It's been busy, but finally catching up on the final season of that, and got into watching an episode of that last night. So another one of my favorite series, The Handmaid's Tale. So we'll finish up Mayans probably tonight, and then finish up Handmaid's Tale here over the rest of the summer. And then I'll be ready for the fall when I watch very little TV.
Yeah, exactly. This is, I think every summer I would pick like a different series a lot of times and binge. And I haven't really done that yet, but yeah, this fall will be weird, with all the strikes, when is everything going to kind of take place? But it's also a good time to catch up on ones that I've been thinking about or kind of want to get into, but I don't know. I'm a chronic, just an absolute worst person to sit with it during just TV because I surf like no other, and I'll go through Netflix or Hulu or Amazon Prime, and I'll watch a little bit of the trailer, and then I'll go to something else. And my wife's like, you've sat there for an hour and just looked through all this stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I kind of want to watch it, but I don't know if I want to dedicate the time to it. But I'll sure as hell dedicate the time to surfing the whole time. So, and yeah, maybe I can figure something out. But then once football starts, I might pick one show and watch it once a week, and that'll be about it.
Yeah, and it's coming quickly. We found out yesterday. We found out recently who was going to Indianapolis for Iowa football, and I think both you and I had heard the possibility of Noah Shannon being part of the gambling investigation, which when he was announced going to Indianapolis, I think you probably had a similar reaction to me, like, interesting. And then yesterday, Wednesday, July 19th, we found out that Jay Higgins, an Indiana native, would be replacing Noah Shannon. Noah Shannon backed out because he's part of the gambling investigation. And saw another national story updating that gambling investigation and talking to the criminal investigation folks in Iowa, and they say they have no update. What is going on?
I wish I knew. I wish I had an idea, and I know they do.
Can we put an end to this thing already? How involved can it be?
Yeah, I mean, unless there's, if it's innocent enough, I mean, you'd hope that they would have, I mean, we're getting close to 3 months now. You'd like to see some sort of conclusion or at least a light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, now is it criminal or is it just kids being kids? I'd like to know that answer. And if there are different athletes, let's say that out of the 26 that were initially implicated, that 20 of them really have no issues other than they gambled and they're going to have suspensions or whatever.
Right. If there's one kid that made like a bet or two, just let them out of this. It seems like it would be unusual if all of the people involved in this were, gambling on the same level.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, there's going to be somebody, and I know that there are different levels, whether they're current or former athletes at Iowa. And certainly there's a huge difference in some of them in Iowa State as well, that, some did a lot, some did a little. And the ones that did a lot are the ones that are going to have to, I guess there's some that maybe they already let go and we just don't know it. Maybe they're just going to announce all of them at once, other than, of course, Noah Shannon and what we discovered with baseball. But I think really it's unfortunate that it's just the lack of any kind of knowledge of it gets frustrating after a while. And I know I listened to Matt Campbell talk last week about, he's hoping to get more clarity before the start of training camp. Is kind of what he said. He said he had no updates, but that's when he's hoping for. I think at that point, you kind of have to, if you're the football coach, or at least acknowledge what the issues are. So that's, but it's getting, to circle all the way back to Noah Shannon. We knew about it, we'd heard about it all along, and he's always a name that kind of resurfaced, but we don't know how much he's done. We don't know if it's 200 or less. It's just education anyway.
I wonder, it makes me think they included him initially in going to Indianapolis. Maybe I'm connecting the dots wrong here, but that leads me to believe that what he did wasn't that serious, if they were even considering bringing him, because I don't think they just found out in the last week that he was somebody that was part of it.
Well, exactly. Or they probably thought that it'd be adjudicated by now.
Yeah.
And maybe he get a 1-game suspension. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know how much he bet. He could bet 20 cents for all I know, or $2,000. But they probably.
Can you bet 20 cents?
Well, you can if you're.
That'd be my betting range.
Yeah, get caught. Penny slots, man.
Yeah.
And then
rest in peace to my grandma Lee, who loved the penny slots.
And then I think that was some of the best gambling I've ever done in Vegas. Penny slots, But no, I mean, if he bet $5 versus, 500 versus 1,000, I mean, that's a huge disparity in range and how you're going to handle things. And I think in his case, maybe they thought it was going to be over by now. Maybe then, hey, I was part of it. I was looked into, but I didn't bet that much and blah, blah, blah. Well, maybe, he doesn't want to answer any questions about it either. Maybe he just decides, what, I don't want to have to, even if I'm fine, I just don't want to have to spend half my, I guess they only have a half an hour now instead of an hour like it used to be. But, I don't want to spend all my time discussing stuff like this. And that's understandable. I was surprised when his name was brought up, just because I knew that he was involved in it. And so to reach this point, it's a mature decision if he's the one who decided to make it. And I have no reason to believe otherwise. He's always been a mature young man. So, I guess we'll talk to Jay.
So now that it is out there and his name is out there, then you wonder, is there a suspension? What's the suspension? I mean, he's a starting defensive tackle. They obviously have depth at that position. Now you wonder, when is a decision going to be made? And if the investigation is still going on, is the situation treated like the baseball situation where you're just not allowed to compete until we finish this investigation? So does that mean these football players are just on the hook if the investigation decides, we're still not comfortable, we don't have a conclusion yet, and it goes into, the end of August into September, That's why I feel like, again, Scott and I think Scott and I are in agreement on this. These guys knew it was wrong and they did it anyway. And you deal with punishment for doing things like that. But it just seems like this, if you're going to open an investigation and look into it, that unless this is just like a crazy involved with a bunch of tentacles, and we haven't gotten any indication that, these guys are betting on their teams or their sport or their school or whatever it is, but maybe the school in certain situations. But I don't know. You're going to be punished for your transgression, but can I get my punishment at some point here instead of just leaving me twisting in the wind for months? And that's, to me, I have no problem with them handing out punishment for this if it's a rules violation, but there should also be some courtesy here with these kids that have a small window of time to play their college careers to be able to come up with a resolution here.
That very well could be the case, but it's also, they may already know, we just don't know. And that's, they could have already said, okay, we talked to the NCAA about you bet $150 on the Super Bowl and some NBA games, and we're just going to educate you, which is everybody gets educated, I guess, on this,
yeah.
Which I think is fair, that probably the whole team and everybody around the team should be as well. But I think, so they may know it, or they may not. Maybe they are just as much in the dark as we all are. And as frustrating as it could be for us or for fans, it's exponentially worse for players because their lives are at stake. I mean, Noah Shannon's not coming back to Iowa for a sixth year just to sit on the sidelines for 6 games or more, so this is it's.
What if he would have come back if he knew this was going to happen?
Yeah, if it's really undetermined for him, and we still have 6+ weeks,
right?
And he can practice, all of them can practice, so they're not going to miss any kind of function, until they know that, again, well, you got to sit out a game or 2 games or whatever. But it's just I don't know. I guess at this point, hopefully we can find out more. I think everybody wants to put it behind them, and I know it's the same case at Iowa State too. And I think they actually have some more severe cases than Iowa does in football anyway. But in Noah's case, 6th-year guy, we all respect him, been around the system for a long, long time, well liked, and this is unfortunate for him because we do as who's going to represent. We're looking at it for our point of view as who are the most interesting people and best players, and so
you locked up, or at least locked up on my end. So
okay.
I paused the recording. We'll hop back in here. Just
Okay.
pick up, just kind of repeat what you said, and I'll edit it when, or something close to that. Are you there? Yeah, you're locked up again. I don't know if that's my end. Let me look at my internet. It looks strong, but now you're moving again.
Okay.
You're not locked up.
All right. Well,
where I'm trying to think. Can you repeat that kind of thought there, and I'll go back and edit that out.
Sure.
I'll come back in here and just talk about the technical difficulty, and then you can take off.
Okay.
Sorry about that. We had a little hiccup there, connection wise or whatever. I don't know, some type of technical computer issue. But Scott was talking about Noah Shannon's case. Locked up again.
All right. I just switched to a different link. Let's see if this helps.
Yeah, you were a little choppy earlier, but now you're locking up a lot. So
Okay.
try this again. You're locked up again. No,
Yeah.
no, you're not.
Yeah, now you are.
Am I locking up too?
Well, a little bit. You're choppy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's give this a go. If it doesn't work, we can sign off and sign back in.
Okay.
You look I just want to make sure you don't lock up before I go back on again. Okay. Looks like we may have reestablished connections.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Little technical difficulties. We haven't had that for a while. Maybe just a wake up call for us that sometimes these things happen and there's editing involved in these things. I don't know what's happening on YouTube Live. Sorry, folks over there. We are back. And Scott was talking about the Noah Shannon case, and we'll pick up there. And hopefully I can edit this.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Roll.
All right. Yeah. I think when we were talking about Noah, and I'm trying to remember what I said and how much might end up in here, but
I'm sure it was brilliant.
yeah,
Everything we say on this podcast is high level brilliance.
yeah, I'm certainly, the scarecrow on this one, but, Noah deserved it to have that recognition to go to Indianapolis. Those types of, it's an honor for the football program. That's how they view it. Of course, we view it differently. We want the most interesting and best players to go. And I think Cooper DeJean fits the bill on both ends. But, Noah is an important person who represents the program the way they want it represented. And I think when you look at, and that's why he was given that honor. And the fact that he's not going to go is fine. I mean, but it's really unfortunate for him. I'm sure what why they gave him that to begin with just had to deal with they probably figured it was either done or it was going to be done, or Noah's not going to be a problem with this case. And yet now here we are going, all right, what's is he going to be, and now he's probably going to have to answer a ton of questions regarding this. And I think that's probably why it makes sense to probably back him off. But I was kind of surprised he was there to begin with, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it was interesting. When I saw it, I was like, okay, so nothing to see there. He's in good shape, and obviously with the press release yesterday that there have been a switch in representation for Iowa. We'll see. I'm sure Kirk will be asked about that down there now as a result of this, and where things are at there. So he'll be able to share his opinion on how he feels this investigation is gone, which will be interesting. I'm sure he'll be diplomatic about it, but also probably support his student athletes, and them, as we talked about, them getting some closure on this thing sooner rather than later.
Right. I think in some respects here, what we're going to, see is, he was a couple of months ago, I talked to him in Cedar Rapids and in Carroll, and Kirk both times was, he really got kind of, it was still early enough in the investigation where.
When was that?
Yeah, that was in May. That was
okay,
during the iClub stuff. And so he talked a little bit about the investigation, but really at that point, it was still in the beginning, and he's probably thinking of it like, I'm not going to stress out about it. The season's not for another 3+ months. We'll just go, nothing's changed as far as workouts go, and I'll know what I know. But now that you're getting into a couple of weeks from training camp, Indianapolis, and then that's when it starts to go, okay, this is we need to get some sort of conclusion here. So I figured he probably would have to answer these questions anyway, just like Matt Campbell did. I hope in his case that nobody really asks him while he's at the podium. I mean, like at the big podium. But if he is, then he is. And I'd rather get a little bit more clarity on the side.
Is your mic level all the way up? Somebody in the YouTube chat room said your volume isn't as high as mine. You sound okay to me, but
Okay, let me check here. So, all right, let me.
this is high level podcasting
Yeah.
right here.
Yeah, this is why we are.
We are not professionals, man. We got into this business to write.
Yeah, exactly. I am not an
There you go.
electrician.
That's
All
much
right.
better.
Okay, I just turned it up. So thank you in the YouTube chat room for
That was
helping me out.
courtesy of Hair Trigger 83 in the chat room.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you. What a great year 83 was.
Dino asked, are there any rumors about Iowa women's wrestling opponents? I have not seen a schedule. It's a good question. It's coming quickly, but it's going to be tricky, I would think, initially, just because there aren't a lot of programs, especially when at Iowa's, size of Iowa, a Big Ten schools level, Power Five.
Yeah, I haven't heard of any, and I know that that most of them are really low level because there aren't any Power Five ones. There aren't any Big Ten programs, and there should be. I mean, come on, I think that would be a really smart decision by Penn State, by maybe Minnesota, Oklahoma State, Iowa State.
Michigan and Ohio State have money to burn.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they have the rifle team and water polo and all that kind of stuff. Maybe make a flip there. No, I don't know. It's easy for me to tell people what to do with their money, but I do think that with this, what makes the most sense to me, Rob, and I don't know about you, is try to have these duels maybe as double headers or something like that with the men, and not every single time, but maybe especially early in the year when you have some of the whatever duels, the duels just to kind of have them, and then have like Missouri Valley or Augustana or whoever else is out there in women's wrestling compete, and have them like an hour before or something like that.
Yeah, that's a great idea, and hopefully they do what they can to, generate. I think there's a ton of interest there already, but to get as much as possible, generate as much interest as possible early on, and we know that the men's wrestling meets sell out pretty much regularly these days. So it'd be nice to get those seats filled and have people. Especially, families bring their kids and kind of get into that at on the ground floor and be a part of the program. We saw it a little bit with the Heartlanders hockey team, people trying to get in there, and they've had some struggles with attendance. But it's really important. This initial season is really important to build. There's the niche of wrestling fans that are already in, but you want to bring more people in.
Yeah, sure. And when you're bringing in a different gender, women's wrestling to the mix, that I think you have your hardcore fans. And I think in some ways, Rob, WWE is allowed for women's competition in that genre to really grow and have interest beyond just some sort of novelty, maybe the way it was back in the 80s with us, with the Fabulous Moolah and Glow and all that. And I know it's different, and I don't, but what I mean is, it's not just looked upon as, oh, ain't they quaint? That's neat. No, it's nothing like that. It's legit. It's an Olympic sport. It's one that's going to be, have heavy interest. And I think Iowa wrestling fans will have heavy interest in it. And
Iowa's loaded, right? I don't know a lot about it, but it seems like every recruit they get is like very high end.
Yeah, right. It looks like every one of them competes at a world level and, a championship level. And then, who knows, the national tournament will be Iowa versus Iowa in some of these categories, which is probably what it should be anyway. But it'll be a fascinating wrestling season as a whole. I mean, we talked about football, Rob, and the gambling investigation. There's a lot. I've heard there's more with wrestling than there is with the other sports. So, if they could bring in a ringer for a year, that might help this team compete and maybe bring some more eyeballs to the arena and to the television, on the men's side, that is.
When will we find out about this ringer? Is that announcement Tuesday? Did I see that?
Yeah, Tuesday, WWE Next. I think unless you're sleeping under a rock or really don't care or haven't paid attention, Gable Stevenson's been kind of promoting this. Should he stay with the WWE? Should he go back to college? I think he's had pictures with him and Tom Brands and him in an Iowa t-shirt when he was a young kid. And, whether he stays in Minnesota or comes to Iowa to compete. And that would be something because, last year with when you had Spencer Lee, he was an attraction to himself. But the difference is Spencer Lee is like an attraction for wrestling fans and people on the edge of wrestling because he's so dominant. Gable Stevenson is like WWE excitement. He's like, Tori Ewing, or the Big E, I should say. So, so he's got a different brand and persona, and he's big, and he can do cartwheels and flips and stuff. And so if he was to happen to wear a Iowa wrestling singlet this year, it would be off the charts. I mean, they don't need to sell out the arena anymore because they already been doing that, but it will build even more excitement. And then when you throw on the fact that the new wrestling facility should be done in 6 months, I think 6-7 months.
The sooner the better.
Yeah. Then wow. Construction wise, Rob. Yeah.
I don't want to people take out the tiny violin for me having, but parking was a challenge the other day over there for football interviews with the construction going on and state baseball going on. So
yeah, very
much. If you have plans to go over to Carver to get tickets or anything like that, give yourself some extra time.
I'd wait till at least next week.
Yeah.
Just because, the state baseball playoffs over there. But
I will say this, but I want to get this out there for the football program. General public tickets went on sale, single game public tickets for Iowa football. Did I say that right? Went on sale at 9:00 this morning. So if you're interested in those, you better get on it.
Yeah, especially a couple of specific games. Although when you want to, it's not their fault, but when you look at their schedule, it's not the easiest one for them to just walk in. Like last year, Michigan and Wisconsin and Iowa State. It's like boom, boom, boom. Those would be gone by today.
Nebraska.
Yeah, Nebraska too, and the whole season was sold out. I think this time around. The Western Michigan and Utah State might be a little bit of a challenge. And then you never know with like Illinois and Purdue, although Purdue, I think, is homecoming. Michigan State is not the Michigan State it was with D'Antonio. They could be good, but I don't think they will be great. Minnesota is kind of the hallmark, it's kind of the key team. And Rutgers in November.
Marquee? Is Minnesota the marquee home game this year?
I think so.
Wow.
It's like 1960 all over again. Yeah. So, and then Rutgers, I think in Rutgers and Illinois finished the season at home for Iowa. It's one thing when you're playing Rutgers like in September, like they have in the past. Then it's kind of like it feels like
it's a non-conference game, basically.
Yeah. Then it's like real now that it's like it's November 14th.
Yeah.
That's like when we should be playing like Purdue, because Iowa's been a little bit spoiled and then they played like all their divisional foes for like the last 6 games of the year for most every season. And now you're going, you go like in the middle of October is like Wisconsin, and it's Wisconsin and Minnesota back to back. Then you got a bye like late October, and then it's like Northwestern at Wrigley, Rutgers, Illinois, and Nebraska. So, that's I tell you what, if you can get to that point and you're unbeaten, you're going to feel pretty good about yourselves. Maybe finishing the regular season 12-0. But I don't know. That Penn State game might be kind of tough.
Technical too, and we'll see next year with the blowing up of the divisions. How the schedule is laid out will be interesting to see as well. Let's get back. I'm sorry, I got us off track. We were talking about Gable Stevenson before I started to talk about, remind people to get their football tickets.
Yeah. So yeah, we're supposed to know on Tuesday night, and I mean they've been teasing this for a while. The Gable Stevenson on Twitter, and he put like like the baby chick sign on Twitter. The emoji that's signifies Iowa, and then with a question mark, and then he put M for the.
You think he's messing with? How can he mess with Iowa fans like this? They're going to hate him if he doesn't come here.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's weird if you're going to do that and then turn heel on it,
Yeah, but maybe that's the WWE thing.
It could be.
He's going to be a heel.
I think in some ways, this is just, either way, he's playing to the crowd. He's playing it up. And that's
either way, he's getting paid.
Yeah. And he's getting a lot of people noticing him, that maybe would have ignored him if he was just going to go to WWE. And yeah, he was good in Minnesota. I like watching him. I like watching him compete for Team USA. But when you look at it, if he wants to next year, and this is, if there was one benefit, and it's probably just for him alone in having the COVID year wipe out the Olympics for a year, is he competed in 2021 and won the gold. That's only a 3-year wait to the next Olympics. He's got a year to compete in collegiate. And now folk style and freestyle are completely different, but there's enough of the same discipline that, it's really helpful. So, and in the back of his mind, and I'm only speculating here, is the combination of, I could go to WWE now and be great, be a fun wrestler to watch, or I could go win another gold medal and compete and win a national title. And then if you're looking at WWE as your future, which he obviously is, he's going to be a star. Well, do you want to do it in Minnesota before 5,000 fans at max, or you want to go do it before 15 every single duel? And then you can play up to the crowd like you will when you're in WWE. And that's what Iowa is. That's where Iowa can build that is, he can do the exact same thing at Minnesota as he does at Iowa. He's going to go out and win a national title, train for the Olympics while doing it, and you got the Hawkeye Wrestling Club here too, and they'll be in that new facility. But, he can do it before 15,000 fans, and having that kind of atmosphere every night, that's something you want as a wrestler, especially somebody who's going to try to promote himself, and I don't know what NIL is going to play into this. Iowa doesn't have a collective. But it does have some deep pockets on the wrestling side of things.
Yes, it does.
My guess is he either I think he comes back. That's just a guess. That's not a prediction, but I think he comes to Iowa. I think he does. I think he comes to Iowa so he can win another natty, and then he can go on and win gold and then go to the WWE, and he'll be, really boost his popularity, because it's just something that, nobody knows about the Olympic athletes until you get to about April next year, whereas he can build a following wrestling for the mecca of college wrestling.
And that Penn State duel is already going to be lit, as the kids say. But if you had Stevenson fighting or wrestling against fellow Twin Cities native Greg Kirkvliet, their heavyweight, that would that'd be good stuff.
Oh yeah. And that one's already awesome. I mean, I remember the last time they wrestled here, it was 1 versus 2, and tickets went for like $150.
Great atmosphere.
And it's just, and you look at the teams that they're wrestling against this year at home. I mean, it's, you're going to get they're going to sell it out again. And if Stevenson does it, they might as well just start the season ticket sales right then and there, because everybody's going to want a piece of that. Yeah, I mean, you think about it, Rob, the 2 most marketable athletes outside of football in college athletics are Caitlin Clark and Gable Stevenson. And they could both be in the same campus. I wrote about that with Spencer Lee last year. And again, Spencer, fantastic wrestler, and I expect him to win gold in the Olympics at some point. But it's just different when you have a heavyweight. It's just like the difference between being a lightweight boxer and a heavyweight boxer. It's just, you're known at that level a little bit more.
You know who else could benefit a ton from that? Ben Keeter.
Yeah, no question. No question.
The room would be lit. I use lit again.
We're not going to go.
With that, let's take a break. That's an excellent spot to take a break here. We'll come back on the other side with more Hawkeye talk. Let me get my read up here. I should know this one by heart by now. I probably do, but I don't want to mess it up. Support for the podcast, folks, comes from Systems Unlimited, celebrating 50 years of providing services to people living with disabilities and mental health needs throughout East Central Iowa. A list of their services and upcoming events can be found at sui.org. That is sui.org. Thank you to Systems Unlimited. Over 50 years of great service in East Central Iowa, and we certainly appreciate them supporting the podcast. So here's from some more of our sponsors, and we will be back on the other side. Thank you to our sponsors, and thank you folks for hanging in there for a minute or two as we pay the bills, as they say. Scott Docterman from The Athletic, Rob Howe, Hawkeye Hotspot podcast. That's where you are. Oh, where do we want to go next? Let's go to the newest Hawkeye football player. Iowa received verbal commitment number 20 yesterday. Wednesday, July 19th. Chima Chinike, defensive end from Plano, Texas. Had some nice offers, Kansas, Texas Tech, Oklahoma State, etc. Good get. Iowa is doing well. Fourth defensive lineman in this class, and some real intriguing prospects, including Mr. Chinike, Scott.
Oh, yeah. I think they've really done a nice job with this. And I really liked his film from what I saw, and I think I feel the same way about really all four defensive linemen, that you can see, the starter kit is there. It's going to take development. They're not going to walk in the door. They're not AJ Epineza, and going to walk in and contribute right away as far as being an elite player. But I think in 2 to 3 to 4 years, and I think I used with Chinike, is that how you pronounce it?
I think it's Chinike.
I saw a lot of like Chauncey Golston, really, really long arms. Mm-hmm. And you can see that he has a build that he can really pile on some weight and some strength. I like his get off. The long arms are something that I'm just like, wow, that's going to be fantastic. And it's at some point, 2 to 3 years down the road after he's on campus, I think he's going to be, quite the player for Iowa. And I felt the same way about Joseph Anderson from St. Louis. I thought, wow, that's a really good get. Devin Kennedy, I mean, if he's anything like his old man, he's going to be fantastic. And Drew Campbell, salt of the earth, tough guy like his brother. And so I really like this quartet. I think they've got the opportunity, whereas a couple of the more recent ones, I think they're on developmental track. I think these guys are developmental, but I like their potential to reach higher levels maybe than some of the others.
Yep. And in these situations, Scott, it almost always comes down to, the kid and this group of kids coming in and buying into that development, because it's, that's hard. I mean, you're going from playing, consistently on your high school team to now working your way back up the ladder. And that can be difficult for guys, and it doesn't work for everybody. So this is a good group of guys. You hope all four are able to hit that potential, hit that ceiling. But you've got a good group there that, you get two of them that end up pushing through to that, third year, possibly, the redshirt sophomore year, into that junior year. That's when you hope to see some returns. And I'm hoping all four guys do. And I think all four guys have that potential. And it's just a matter of doing the work, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, they've been blessed, Rob, over the last few years to have some incredible depth. And they do this year because, and if you to turn back the clock to like 2015 or 16, if you were to have a situation with Noah Shannon, you'd be like, oh my God, what are they going to do? When they're throwing in Cedric Lattimore as a true freshman, and he wasn't anywhere near ready, but it was just like, you need a body there to get in the way. I think when you look at this roster and this depth chart now in defensive line, that you can actually develop them. You can, without pressure. Now their own pressure is going to be to compete every single day and compete against one another, but with one another. And you got guys coming in now, this year, Chase Brackney, I think is a guy that's got some real potential. Kenny Merriweather is, flashed a lot in high school. Max Borcherding Johnson, who are coming in. He's a guy that's probably got he's probably got a couple of years of development in him before he becomes the player that they want him to be. And then you look at guys entering year two, Brian Allen and Caden Crawford, and, they've got a little bit of, time. So it's funny because all these guys, you just look at them and go, okay, if they develop up to their potential, they've got a chance to be really good. And a lot of them have hit that. And so I really like the way this unit is positioned. And I think, now Rob with 20, if, they're waiting on Xavier Lucas, they've got a receiver, Jaquan Reed coming in September, but they're in a position now where they can be choosy. I think they probably need another receiver, maybe another defensive back. If Lucas says, yay, go for it. Otherwise, I think they're okay sticking with what they have. But, and then they're in that position that Kirk likes to be, which is, hey, let's just take a peek at who's out there and who really develops over their senior year and plays well, and then maybe offer them. So I think they've got another good group of walk-ons that they've assembled so far. So I really like this class. I think low key, it's going to be one of the better classes they've had.
Yeah. And they, going back to the defensive line development, they've done a good job of, building guys up. And we see the guys that are in that room now. And you look at guys like Ethan Herkett and Max Llewellyn, who seem like they're just steadily climbing the ladder. Jeremiah Pittman. There are guys that seem like they're coming behind. And to your point earlier, where there wasn't depth, it's the foundation on the defensive line, I think, is as strong as any position in this program.
Right. And when you have, whatever, Noah for this year and Joe Evans, 6th-year guys, and Logan Lee, and then behind him, as you said, Deontay Craig is another guy who's poised. Developed. Yeah. And in the past, we didn't see this with this defensive line where you lose a first-round draft pick and Lucas Van Ness. And because I've only had 2 historically, and it's almost like, oh well. You lose John Wagner, who's a player that was a multi-year starter, a stalwart. You'll be all right there. And then because you're looking at some of these Aaron Graves, we all see the talent. He's going to be a rock star. Jeremiah Pittman has come a long way to where, again, if we're turning back the clock, he would be in the rotation immediately now, today, if he was in 2017. If Jaleel Johnson was off to the NFL, he'd be a guy that maybe starts. Max Llewellyn, a guy coming along, Ethan Herkett, Y.A. Black. I mean, there's a lot of players there that can play, that are going to start, and so that's why they can bring younger players along to develop them. And they have such a rapport and relationship with Kelvin Bell, who's a superstar on their recruiting trail for them, that, this is, you could make the case that other than maybe defensive line has been the best unit for development and performance that Iowa's had in a long time.
Yeah. You talk about, 2 coaches that are tuned into development. You go from Reese Morgan to Kelvin Bell, and those are 2 guys that are have very keen eyes when it comes on the recruiting trail. And then when they get commitments from kids that they like on the recruiting trail, take that next step and just seamless transition into we're going to start here. We're going to start developing. And, by the time you get, 2, 3, 4 years in the program, you're going to be ready to go.
Yeah. And that's what's made Iowa work all these years is, the development. And you can make the case that the offensive line, they've missed on guys haven't developed, guys have been injured probably at a higher rate than most other places. And that's why it's kind of fallen apart. Whereas on the defensive line, they've been able to maximize all of those players. So, so I really think that, this is a situation where they are way ahead. And again, I look at there are two now redshirt freshmen in Brian Allen and Caden Crawford and seeing their body development. And I think they're poised for, maybe they're a year away, because they just got so many, older players, but they have a potential to be really good players too. And this is where it all starts with Iowa and why they're so much better than most other programs in this area is that Kelvin Bell is as real as it gets. He will tell you, hey, this is where you sit. This is what we see of you. But they build that relationship because they don't bullshit anybody. They look at them and say, we're going to build you up. We think you've got what it takes, but also it's going to be hard. They don't blow sunshine and they don't try to kiss on their neck and say, oh, please come, So I think overall this is going to be this group. I could see at least 2 of them ending up as starters, and that's a big deal at Iowa.
Yep. Got to keep the pipeline going. And, you're not going to beat defensive line, especially defensive tackle, is one of those positions where if you have a 4 or 5-star defensive tackle in high school, he's probably going to a blue blood or, a very high profile program, unless Iowa has, the AJ Epinesa connection or something like that.
Yeah.
Ready-made defensive linemen are a premium.
Yeah. You could make the case that after quarterback, that may be quarterback, maybe offensive tackle, but I think even above offensive tackle, that is the most sought after position, because it just dictates the whole game, and especially from that side of the ball. If you have a person who can get off the edge and rush the quarterback or dominate the interior of the line, which is get to the quarterback, but also bog up, just destroy the running game. Those are game-changing players, and those are premium positions and stuff. And I agree, if his last name's Epinesa, whether it's AJ or IOC, Yo Man coming up, if they can get to him, which won't be easy, but if they can, then hey, they're those are game players that you just immediately plug and play, maybe not plug and start.
Yeah.
Well, they should, but but otherwise that. The Chauncey Golstons of the world to me are the ones where you point them out. And those are the ones that work for all these players. He came in at 215 and, but he worked his ass off, and then he became a first team all Big Ten guy and a 3rd round draft pick. And he played inside, outside, just, and you can make the case that at the Nebraska game, he made the key play. He came off the edge and sacked and forced a fumble. All those years of development and toughness and tough days came to that pinnacle moment. And I think in recruiting process, what Kelvin does as well or better than anybody is he identifies players that have that same mental, they have the requisite physical skills that they need to develop, but they also have the mental makeup that they can excel and work daily to get in that position and not be a me first guy.
Yeah, he gave us a glimpse in the frigid pinstripe bowl of what was to come, Chauncey Golston, delivered a big play in that one as well. Where do I want to go here? Let's talk a little bit about player interviews the other day. We got Caleb Brown for the first time, very quiet young man, kind of was very subdued kind of with us, which is fine. We're new people to him. We're new reporters to him. And I thought he gave some thoughtful answers during his interviews. And I know you wrote about the Cade McNamara, Joe Evans relationship. I asked Joe about that. I don't know if you were there when I was talking to him about it. I'm sure you guys probably asked the same questions about the initial rub between the two guys. And Joe told me he went home and asked his parents what was wrong with Cade and why he didn't like him. It was funny, but let folks know kind of what you have at the Athletic on this interesting relationship. These two guys are now roommates.
Yeah, right. It's quite the bromance, isn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Joe really did not like him.
It wasn't. I got the sense that it wasn't a cool story, bro. Yeah. It was like, I don't like this dude, and I may take his ass out.
Yeah, and he went to Braithwaite even, and he's like, "Hey, I have all kinds of conversations with Ray over all kinds of topics, not just football." And and he's just like, just give him a chance, come on, and so like 2 weeks later, he's like, I was still trying to decide on my 6th year if I was going to use it or not, and I didn't like him. I'm like, what's this kid's deal? And then about 2 weeks later, there was a bunch of guys. They were going out to some dinner, or going out to dinner together, and he was coming along. He's like, all right, I love my brothers, man. These guys are all my brothers, these football players. I'll try. And then within 2 weeks, they became inseparable. And, Cade calls him the best friend he's ever had. They've had, when they had the trip to California, he brought Joe along to be there, to be like the strength and conditioning czar, if you will. Now they're moving in together. It's really, an amazing story, but the big narrowing it down for Iowa, I mean, it's fun between the two of them because, sometimes that happens, but for Iowa, you're talking about two major leaders, two guys that everybody looks to, a 6th-year defensive lineman that was second team all Big Ten last year, who's tied for the team lead in sacks the last 2 years, a former walk-on, well-respected, salt of the earth, tough dude in Joe Evans. And then you're talking about the quarterback that you bought in the transfer portal. And he is going to be, there's no doubt about it, he is the leader to the offense. And all the eggs are in that basket. And when you have your two leaders that, at least in Joe's case, didn't like the other one, but then they worked it out and then became very close. And they build a relationship that's built on respect and friendship and trust and everything like that. I mean, you're looking at, okay, everybody's watching that and it rubs off on them. And it shows the high character that they have. And I think this is maybe one of those moments that you start to think back in November, if things go the right way for Iowa, that this is a piece to the puzzle and the mosaic of their season.
Yeah, and they're kind of out of sight for the public after the bowl game, pretty much until Kids Day. I mean, they get to see them, the spring get together, and when we get to do, when we conduct interviews and write stories and post video and things like that. But for the most part, what happens that next season, what happens in 23 has been building since January. Relationships from, conditioning in the off season to spring ball to, 7-on-7 workouts and all that stuff. And this trip to California, these are all pieces of the puzzle, particularly from a bonding standpoint and a chemistry standpoint, that you don't just build when you get to August camp. This stuff happens over time, and it's a lot of times happens organically, like this situation.
Yeah, it's always the case, because if they don't like each other, or if they don't even want to, or not even that extreme, they just don't care, it's apathetic. That type of chemistry does not help a team. And meaning that the extra reps that you do in February and all that kind of stuff really, help you get better. And then the extra reps you do on the field, or the extra workouts, or the discussions you have,
the most minor details are so impactful in the season, which is in March, maybe they are then I don't even know what their cubicles or whatever that they watch their videos on if they go into the facility, but maybe they watch it together and maybe, hey, see this is what he's doing right here, and why he's been successful doing this. Oh, that's really cool. Thanks for letting me know. Take a note of it. And then you apply it. I mean, that's what relationships do. And when it all comes down, and I've pointed this out a lot, is 3rd and 7 against Wisconsin. It's a tight game, and I expect it to be in Madison. What are you going to do? What is maybe what Joe Evans saw of how one of the Wisconsin linebackers lines up, and, oh, look the way he fights with his hands. He's expecting this. That applies to Cade McNamara, who completes that 3rd down pass, who maybe leads him on a touchdown drive to win the game, versus, I don't care this guy, F this guy, then he doesn't point it out. And that guy gets the quarterback. He disrupts the pass. Iowa punts, maybe loses by a field goal. It really, those smallest details in February and March and June matter so much in October and November. It really boils down to a lot of those situations.
Yeah, and that team chemistry and just, everybody pushing in the right direction helps a great deal when adversity hits. And it hits, whether it's, if they lose at Iowa State, being able to flush that and bounce back, or Penn State, or lose a couple games in a row, not completely falling apart. And we see that time and time again at Iowa, where there'll be, a bad game, or a bad series, or, a bad stretch of games that the team picks itself up. And that has a lot to do with what they do during the offseason, is building belief in each other and continuity and chemistry to keep pushing through for an entire season. It's a grind.
It is. You look at so many situations in the way that they've rebounded, and us against the world, and it's there. You look at last year after what happened at Illinois and Ohio State back to back. I mean, and they're 3-4. And if you were to ask me, they're either going to win 5 out of the next 6, or they're going to lose 5 out of the next 6. I thought they were going to lose them. I really did. I just thought that they just didn't look the part. Well, that's where team chemistry, leadership, mentality, it starts at the top, but make no mistake, if the players aren't buying in, then it's not going to happen. And you look at all these other key junctures in recent Iowa history. I think 2020 is as good of an example as any, to have what they dealt with in the offseason, both internally and then externally with COVID and everything. And then to start 0-2 and your wide receiver gets an OWI, it could have fallen apart completely from there. And instead they had one of the best years they ever had. 2016 to go to Penn State and get bombed by giving up 600 yards and then come back and beat Michigan. You got to have it. You got to have that mental approach, and it takes a lot of the chemistry in the off season to do that. And it takes leadership. It takes coaching, because at those key junctures, anybody that was wishy-washy on that team had just gone in the other direction. Oh, this team sucks. But they did it. They won 8 games last year with a team with an offense that could barely win one, and they squeezed a lot of the last drop of every ketchup bottle they had, but they did it. And it goes back to how they feel about one another, how they interact. And, it's a new team every year. You can't just rely on it, because there's no Jack Campbell this year. Somebody else is going to have to fill that void, that vacuum. And I'm not saying middle linebacker, because there's no other middle linebacker like Jack Campbell, but leadership, toughness, 3rd and 4, who's going to make the stop, who's going to complete the pass, who's going to, kick the game-winning field goal. All those things are, that really, it really does start, Rob. It starts in January. And if, if you got a defensive end who doesn't take that next step after F this kid to, now they're best buds, then it could have an adverse situation. Because what happens in training camp, if Cade completes a couple of passes and starts talking smack. What Joe Evans does at that point, if he doesn't like him, has ramifications throughout the camp and the way the teams feel about each other and picking one another up. And then if the offense goes out at Iowa State and goes 3 and out 4 straight times, it could be the difference between, hey, come on, we got him. You're all right. Versus, why don't you guys freaking do something? And that's where it all boils down.
I think in my head through the years I've gotten conditioned now to not overreact to an Iowa loss or even multiple losses. I in my just mental Rolodex going back to 2002 after the Iowa State game, or 2004 after Arizona State and Michigan, or 2008 after that loss at Illinois on the field goal and juice. I mean, you go through the years, all these times where you're like, shit, this thing's falling apart, and then boom, they figure it out. And that's why Scott and I are talking about the importance of this, the off-season program, the 8 months you put into before taking the field, and the consistency and being able to navigate that and being able to deal with adversity. It's not an accident. It's not a mistake when it happens this frequently, when it happens repetitively through a quarter of a century.
You're right. And there are things to criticize Kirk Ferentz for, but this is one to praise him for. And I've seen a lot of great coaches and a lot of great sports compete at the highest level for a long time. A Nick Saban, you cannot question his success, or anybody, or Bill Belichick or whatever. But I've never seen a better coach when it comes to adversity and bouncing back than Kirk Ferentz, because all those situations, there's only been a couple of years, Rob, where they have went down the tubes. 06, that was a year where things fell apart. But how did they play in that bowl game against Texas? They were 6-6. Texas was 10-2, and they really damn near, they should have won, and they could have won, and maybe a bad call away from winning. When you look at 2012, okay, their talent was pretty sparse on the offensive side, and they were 4-8, but they're also, when they lost 2 NFL linemen back to back, that was really impactful. I think they could have maybe squeezed out a bowl season, but you're looking at those 2 seasons, maybe even 2010, where their expectations were so high. When you look at the losses, was it chemistry based? I don't know. I think they played really good teams and got beat in the last few minutes of those games, except for the Minnesota game. I think you've got to really
that team beat a double-digit win Missouri team,
right,
in the ball game.
Exactly. Without when there were fights, you didn't talk about chemistry. There were some chemistry issues, and there were fights in bowl prep when you had your running back arrested the day before, and yet they went and they beat a 10-2 Missouri team that was ranked 12th in the country. So to be able to put it all behind them, and Michigan game, well, that really says a lot for this program and what its strengths are and how embedded it is. And it's getting the right people on the bus and keeping them on the bus and building up that organic leadership and relationships. And I think Cade McNamara and Joe Evans are just another cog into what has, happened for 25 years.
Yeah, looking forward to this season. Very intriguing storylines, and kind of the new age of college football with transfer portal and all that. I'm interested to see how it all comes together this season. Had to get to this at some point, Scott. Awful news this last week in terms of, last week we were at a ceremony for one of our colleagues who passed away, and Steve Batterson. Then we learned last week about the passing of Randy Larson, longtime commissioner of the Primetime League and Game Time League, and local lawyer and huge Iowa basketball supporter. And then another punch in the gut this week, losing a guy that we've talked about a lot on this podcast, actually in relation to the offensive line and some of the struggles directly related to his injuries, and the injuries that ended his career. And Cody Ince was I mean, everything I've seen, everything I've heard, people I've talked to was just a super, super guy, super kid, and just tragic. 23 shouldn't happen. It shouldn't happen. And he was that Tuesday that we learned about that Cody incident.
Yeah, we learned.
I think 2 days ago.
Yeah, it happened
Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So really, I don't know what to say on this one. It's just I know it's crushing for the football program and his family, and just awful. Engaged to be married, just terrible.
Yeah, and there are obviously different categories. Randy lived a full life and is instrumental to basketball popularity wise. He was part of that rise, with the primetime league, and then later with the game time league. I'll kind of start there, and I think I was missing something not having PTL because it gave fans a chance to see these players and interact with some of them up close in the summer. And it gave us a chance to write about them and talk to them and see them and kind of help build up the program in a positive way. And I think not having that has been a detriment for Iowa basketball. And I think in Randy's case, nobody loved that thing more than him. I mean,
no, and I said to somebody the other day, I said, there are other people that could do what he did, but it's a short list. I mean, he was completely invested in that endeavor.
He loved it. He was there. He was in charge of it, and coached and, commissioner and
got us box scores.
Yeah. I mean, he did.
I mean, he'd be out there on the Xerox machine, making sure we got box scores while the games are going on.
Right. So, there were times when it was, let's face it, there were eye-rolling moments with Randy. There were times where, some of our colleagues
could be a little hyperbolic.
Yeah. Oh yeah. About players. And there were times when some of our colleagues might say, come on, God, it's just it's Sunday afternoon. Let's go. Don't call this timeout with 3 minutes to go, so there's so many memories with the PTL that way. Plus it's only a couple blocks from my house, but I think, it did show his love and appreciation for the program. He was an amazing supporter. It promoted the league like no other. It helped us with our jobs, and it really helped Iowa, because when you saw, a couple of gyms, 2 gyms full of people, whether it was on a Wednesday night or a Thursday or a Tuesday or whatever in the midweek, and then on a Sunday, it helped promote it. And then he also adapted, when UNI was like, man, that's too far for us to drive. Well, then he had games up in Waterloo. Yep. And so he made it work. And I think it was really helpful for the Iowa program. Again, was it important to their skill development? No. I mean, they learned how to do things in a better way. But I think it just, being able to watch Tyler Cook go out there and tomahawk, or, just all the players, and then former players sticking around and playing in it for a while. And then the small college guys, and even Marcus Page, I think, competed in it when he was like in 8th grade,
I remember. Yeah. I mean, and it was probably late 90s. They were still playing at West High. Mm-hmm. And I remember covering that game, and it was like AC Earl was playing. Jess Settles was still at Iowa, I think. Brad Lowhouse. I mean, it was back then there were a lot of guys that would come, that had NBA experience or were still in the NBA who would come back and play in that league in the summer. And that team had, Ryan Bowen and J.R. Koch and Kent McCausland. Those were fun summer league games, hot as shit in the West High gym with no air conditioning, but fun games to watch. And man, just think about all the players that played in that league for 31 years. A lot of really good players.
A lot of pros, and again, that's unfortunate. There were times, I'm not going to say this was just all wonderful. I mean, after about the first 2 or 3, you're ready for it to end.
Yeah.
But it was it was good to see those athletes. It was good to get the exposure, and nobody promoted it, liked it like Randy. I sat in on the draft one year with him. I think it was at Monica's, and just kind of went over everything. I thought it was it was just, or no, it was his law offices. I was there at a different function there or something, but so rest in peace, Randy. You made a mark for sure in the community. He also, worked pro bono a lot on when it came to some attorney, situations with Iowa athletes. And, so he will be missed because he was a real important piece to the Iowa basketball puzzle for a long decades.
Yep, and had some great restaurants.
Yeah.
Bob's Your Uncle, Monica's, Airliner. I mean, pretty involved in the community in Iowa City, and he certainly will be missed. As will Cody Ince. That's just, to me, it's one of those ones where you just, like Kyle Calloway, you're like, this can't be real. And unfortunately it is. And just, condolences to their families. I can't even imagine, being a parent, what that's like going through that.
Yeah. This one hits home a little bit for me because I took my son up to college one time. I think it was his freshman year. And then I went out and visited Cody, who was, an hour-ish east of St. Paul, Minnesota. And, spent the afternoon with him and talked to his family, his coaches, went to a basketball practice of his, and, really a quiet, reserved guy, but a fun guy, and had some really good, discussions. He loved to hunt. He really fit in well at Iowa. I remember, he got his bear, and that was a big deal, because he's a bear hunter in Wisconsin. He was on his ice fishing high school team. They have their own shanty up there and on a lake. And it was like this, so to see the outpouring of his teammates and the pain that they're having it's really sad. 23 years old. It's, Randy lived a full life, and, you're going to miss him and what he represented. But we have somebody like that who's, he had to retire early. He was an NFL lineman. He was, if he wasn't hurt in 21, if he wasn't hurt, all of that, had to retire early, he might have been, he would have been an NFL draft pick. He would have been on the team. He could have played 5 positions. That's what they always talked about. He's probably best served as an interior lineman. And it's just a shame. It's so sad when this happens. And so I feel for his former teammates and everything with him.
Yeah, it was when I had heard about it and went to his memorial page, and his services will let people know that Cody's family will greet visitors on Saturday, July 22nd. So in 2 days, from 2 to 4 at the Unity High School Gymnasium. That is in Balsam Lake, Wisconsin, with a celebration of life at 4 p.m., officiated by Reverend Angie Cutney, and followed by continued celebration at the Browteen Event Center, and that's in Amory, Wisconsin. And the honorary pallbearers will include Levi and Landon Paulson, along with Jack Heflin, his former teammates. And that is this Saturday in Wisconsin. And you can tell. I think there's that, when you lose somebody that you love and or as a former teammate, there's that initial kind of outpouring, but it just, when you read reaction from his former teammates, you really got a sense of how well liked he was. And it was something as simple as what Tyrone Tracy Jr. wrote on his on the memorial page Tuesday morning that kind of brought a tear to my eye about, Cody would bring in animal jerky, turkey jerky, beef jerky, whatever he was hunting, he would bring jerky in, and he would make sure to find Tyrone, because Tyrone loved it so much. He would find Tyrone to make sure he got some of that jerky that he brought in. And that's just, it's a little thing, but I think it really gives you insight into who he was as a person. Just a really engaging and aware person, a good person. And that's, you hate to lose anybody but when you see somebody who's 23 that has so much to give, who's giving to society, who's making the world a better place, it's heartbreaking.
Yeah, for sure. I feel for him, and those are the stories that matter. I mean, they came in the same class together. Joe Evans just talked, he was kind of the same way. He came in as a walk-on, the same year, and just how they, Grizz is what they called him, got part hunting bear, but just because of the size that he had and everything. And to go out of your way to do that for somebody, it shows you just what a great melting pot a football program can be. Here's Cody Ince from a really small town, northern Wisconsin, going out of his way as an offensive lineman, going out of his way to give jerky to Tyrone Tracy, a young African-American man from Indianapolis who plays wide receiver. It just shows you that the connections that everybody has, it's organic and it's real. And 23, man, that's tough.
Yeah, it's awful. It goes to show that we can find common ground in life if we look hard enough and treat each other well. And I think that's kind of part of what Cody's legacy will be. So a kid that, fought through injuries, did his best to try to be on the field and help his teammates.
Yeah.
And then certainly was very inclusive and aware of his teammates off the field and looking to connect with them. And that's sucks. And definitely feel for his fiance and his parents and all of his family. And it sucks. It really does. Somebody hair trigger again, still in the chat room, Cody Ince, Kyle Calloway, Damon Bullock, Derek Mitchell, Tyler Sash. I mean, you go down the list and this it's awful when these things happen. And you just you hope for peace, as much peace as these folks can find that were loved ones. And there's no making sense of it, especially as a parent. You think about it and you're like, man, just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, exactly. So, prayers for him and his family and the friends, and hopefully they can remember him as well as fondly as they do now. And I guess we'll just I imagine Kirk will say something next week.
Yes, and he did have a press release as well. If folks want to check that out, I've heard it's hit him pretty hard. He was obviously offensive line is an area that Kirk works with frequently, so they had a connection. Not really any way to transition, but for our end here on kind of an up note, so to speak. Our Caitlin, it's kind of like where's Waldo, but where's Caitlin Clark this week? John Deere, iCubs games. This week she will be at the IndyCar race as the Grand Marshal at the Iowa Speedway. Scott, she can do it all.
Yeah, she can. I mean, gentlemen, start your engines. It'll be Caitlin Clark saying that before an IndyCar race. What can't she do? And she's so popular. It's not really a forced situation. It's like, who's the most popular person in Iowa? I mean, who knows? In 10 years, she might be celebrity picker at some, if I was ever on College Game Day again,
they could do a lot worse than that.
Yeah, she'll be the celebrity picker. She and Gable Stevenson. Where's Waldo? Where's Caitlin? I mean, is she playing in a golf pro-am or throwing out the first pitch at Wrigley or minor league facility, or she's going to Italy, probably see some relatives over there because they're on her mom's side that they're all Italian. So
that's the good side.
Yeah.
Speaking of somebody who's three quarters Italian.
Yeah, for you, it's you just don't have the last name,
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
hey,
My mom does.
no,
Angelillo.
Angelillo. Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
It's kind of Italian. It's a
I'm
dead giveaway.
Yeah, I'm as German as it gets. So, except I don't eat beets or sauerkraut. I hate both of them. But
Really?
yeah, oh God, no.
I love both of those. And I'm Italian, so you never can tell.
Hey,
You probably like pasta, right?
I do. Pizza, pasta, bruschetta, you betcha. Yeah.
Right.
But it's funny. I'm writing a story. It's going to go up on Monday. Is her and her roommate Kylie Fearback. Both of them are they have a rivalry going with baseball. I mean, Caitlin is as Cubs as it gets, and Kylie is a Chi Sox athlete, and so she's got that as an NIL deal, and so she's going to be at she's been at Guaranteed Rate Park throwing out first pitches a couple of times, and this Cubs and Sox play next week, so. That's gonna be a fun little story that I wrote that appears with our Chicago section.
Nice. Yeah, they Cubs and Sox both stink like my Mets. So bring out football season. Go Aaron Rodgers. I can't believe I still have not come to terms with this, Scott.
Hey, at least you get to watch him on Hard Knocks this year.
Yeah, so. I know. And I saw he was bitching about that the other day. He's a peach. Last thing here, Scott, before we get out, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but it is the big story in the Big Ten right now, what's happening in Evanston. And it seems like daily, this is getting ugly, man. There's lawsuits now, and, Fitz is trying to get, his money from the university. And it's just, this thing doesn't seem like it's going to get better anytime soon. And we talked about it last week. The student athletes that are having to go to Indianapolis next week and probably be the ones to answer the questions about this. I don't like that. I think it should be the president and the athletic director in Indianapolis. Hopefully they do the right thing and do there. But with litigation, who knows? They're just going to say, well, we can't say anything because there's pending litigation. So we're going to send the 22 and 23-year-olds out there to answer your questions.
Yeah, and it's bullshit when you bring them out and then you tell them, hey, just football questions only. Are you kidding me? Come on. This is
because how do you rationalize that and separate those two? What's going on off the field is friggin' directly impacting what these guys are going to experience this fall.
Yeah, Pat Fitzgerald is the biggest figure in that school's athletic history, and he was the head coach for a long time. And
you guys had I don't want to forget this. You guys have a pretty big story on this at the Athletic today, right?
Yeah. Brian Hamilton and Kalen Kaler wrote about, they interviewed 21 players. Some went on record. Some went on, back. Yeah. And described, Camp Kenosha and what it was like there. And to a man, they all, all the hazing, I guess it's to what degree you believe is hazing versus guys screwing around, but it's all legit. And that's not cool, not in today's world. And I know some people, it's less than what they have to do in the Marines. No, that's not true. And the hazing, again, everybody did something stupid when they're kids. It's just the way kids are, but this is beyond that. I don't know what to make of Northwestern right now. And I don't think football is the biggest topic with Northwestern. I can't imagine them. If they win a game, I'll be surprised because they didn't have a very good team to begin with. They were 1-11 last year. And to go without Fitz, to try to put something together, I think it's an incredible detriment to expect 22-year-old young men to go out and try to save the day for the program. I wouldn't have one problem whatsoever if the Big Ten said, all right, the players aren't going to be here. I think it should be left up to them. I remember when in the wake of the Sandusky situation and Penn State's players were there, but they had really true leader types. And it wasn't and the difference is with Northwestern, who knows what these players did? They may have been perpetrators and they may have been victims, and we don't know. Maybe they were both. And so it's different than like the Penn State situation where they were, Michael Motti and Devin Still, and those guys were, that they were clearly off the radar on that.
And Sandusky had been retired.
Yeah.
So these guys were just, playing under Fitzgerald a few weeks ago.
Right. And their feelings maybe, and are they going to be able to say exactly what they want to say? No, they're going to be coached to say, don't say anything about this. This is under investigation, blah, blah, blah. That's not.
I could see it being kind of uncomfortable too. It's definitely going to be uncomfortable. But if you have somebody, from Northwestern Sports Information Department, filtering questions as they come in from people wanting to ask about this situation, it's going to be really wonky. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be, I don't know how productive or useful it's going to be.
Right. And, it is going to be a story. I mean, I'm all for as much, whether it's transparency or just openness in player interviews and whatever. But if Northwestern's players wanted to back out, more power to them. I don't understand. I am surprised that they're going to, at this point, go through it. It wouldn't surprise me at all if that day it's like they're off limits. Because what are you going to ask about new quarterback transfer Ben Bryant? Come on. You're going to ask about, how do they rebound from 1-11 season? Those are questions. And then you feel weird asking that because nobody cares and you're not going to write about it anyway. So I don't know.
I saw something about Dave Wannstedt being asked to come in as I guess they're looking to fill Fitz's coaching because they can hire somebody because Fitz is no longer there. They have an opening. They're looking for some like advisor or something to oversee the interim coach. Yeah,
that's what they're doing. But, I know he said he turned it down, and I guess Skip Holtz was asked and he's turned it down. And so it's just been I don't know what they're going to try to get or, find, but it's not,
you would think they would try to find somebody with maybe a Northwestern background, but I'm going to think that a lot of those people that maybe would be qualified for that job have a relationship with Fitz because they came through the program.
Well, yeah, Fitz is the big, he played, he was the most important football player they've ever had. I mean, Otto Graham's the best, but he was the most important one. And he's been the coach forever. He is Northwestern football. And
he stepped in after a tragedy, after Randy Walker. So,
right. And Gary Barnett, before that, he coached Fitz. He's not going to say anything negative about Fitz. I mean, so all of this stuff, it's all interconnected that you've got to have somebody outside. But then, going forward, how are you going to have somebody from the outside come in and build a network of donors and trust and recruiting? I just think this is going to be a really difficult situation. And I think next week could be a really bad look for Northwestern, for the Big Ten. And unfortunately, some of our media brethren, people I probably work with they're going to be a part of this. And there's going to be questions asked that are going to be really uncomfortable and you're going to look like an asshole, but it's the way it works in this situation. And as we know from taking videos on Tuesdays and after games, sometimes those situations are unavoidable. And
we had the Urban Meyer situation wasn't that long ago. Was it Brett McMurphy who took him? To the woodshed.
Zach Smith, the assistant coach and all that kind of situation. I mean, this is these can be really, really weird.
Well, I'm going to observe because unfortunately these Northwestern kids are going to be up there the same day as Iowa next Wednesday. So I'm sure we will observe that and report back to our podcast listeners. Anything else we need to to talk about, Scott. We got basketball player interviews today. Not sure who we get, but we can talk about that next week, whatever we get out of that. Probably the freshmen, I would think, that haven't been available.
Yeah, I guess you got basketball players today. I won't be able to go, but I think there might be some interesting things discussed. And then next week, Big Ten Media Days, and then it all really starts from there. So all those days of enjoying summer, they're gone with the wind.
Yeah. So people that aren't involved in what we do, enjoy the rest of your summer. Ours is about over.
Yeah, exactly. It didn't feel like it ended. I mean, with the series that I've worked on with the realignment is taking up so much of my summer that it's almost feels like it's not summer. Other than
I've noticed there aren't many slow times in this business anymore. There's always something going on. So it's better than the alternative with nothing going on. So we'll take it.
Yeah, I mean, ever since summer recruiting became, last 5 or 6 years has really taken off. It's changed the calendar for us. I mean, June used to be, all right, PTL, and that's about it. Maybe you get players once for football or something, but now it's busy.
It is, and it's about to get a lot busier. And Scott and I'll be back on the Hawkeye Hotspot podcast to talk about it all. As I said, next week I'll give you a heads up when we are going to record. We'll be in Indianapolis. I'm coming back Wednesday, but Scott's down there for 2 days. He's got other responsibilities at the event to take care of, but we'll shoot for Friday morning if everything holds. If not, I will let you guys know what the plan is. Until then, have a great weekend. Enjoy the summer and your cookouts and whatever's going on in your life. And Scott's got a event coming up this Saturday that we look forward to. Well, maybe we'll have some conversation about that next week as well. And at least things that we can share publicly.
Yeah. They're well, if it was turn back the clock 28 years or whatever, then maybe we wouldn't have to. But I'd be surprised if there's anything that goes that crazy. But yeah.
Scott's got the big 5-0 coming this September. So we're going to celebrate a little early because we can't get to that stuff during the football season. So if you see Scott or interact with him on social media, make sure to let him know that he is not only an old dude, he's a 50-year-old dude.
Man, I'm going to get that ARP. I can't wait for the ARP card and 4 o'clock specials.
Coming, man. I've been getting them for 6 years now that I'm well into my 50s. So all right, folks, thanks for listening to the podcast. Thanks so much to our sponsors, and we will talk to you next week. Say goodbye, Scott.
Goodbye, Scott.